Deep breaths, Boilermaker fans. Wow, that's where I want to start. 92-88 final in overtime. Northwestern upsets Purdue. Insane game. Connor Hope from Heat Check CBB is here. I'm GregWaddell from Sleepers Media. Let's start with the obvious question. I mean, does this just feel like the same team as last season?
Yes and no. We can get to this later. Despite what was his final stat line, 14 rebounds, 35 points, 3 blocks. I think that Zach Edey had a pretty rough game today. The guard play is we're going to address that because the guard play was really bad for Purdue, especially down the stretch. But I'd still be pressed to say that Purdue's not my number 1, number 2 team in the country, even after this game. They just ran into, I think we should start talking about Boo Buie as on the level of a Tyler Kolek. Like he was that good today in a way that even Kolek wasn't against this Purdue backcourt. So familiarity plays a factor in it, but he made some veteran savvy plays towards the end of regulation and in overtime that you don't see a lot of players in college basketball make.
Yeah, no, I love that take. Boo, like I've said, is one of my favorite players in college basketball history since I've been alive. I love the kid. And there really is something magical about it. Like we went to Evanston last year they played Iowa, and it was like a religious experience. When Boo gets going and he turns the crowd, like there's just some magic there that doesn't make a lot of sense. And obviously that arena has now bit Purdue twice in 2 years. But yeah, when comparing Boo to Tyler Kolek, it's like, I think what's special about Boo, and I truly think he's better than any other point guard in the country at this, it feels like when he has a great game, it feels like he's single-handedly beating you. Almost like the Kemba Walker style, right? Whereas like guys like Tyler Kolek, guys like DeJuan Harris, who I thought was pretty good for Kansas tonight, it feels like they have to be table setters, and that's just how, there's nothing wrong with that. It's great players. Boo can be a table setter. At the same time, he's going 10 for 20 for 31 points. He's getting to the line. He has the clutch gene. Like, there's just no way this kid can't beat you. And give Ty Berry, give Ryan Langborg credit because they hit a bunch of shots alongside him. But, I mean, it really is like I called Northwestern one-dimensional in the preview. I thought they were one-dimensional. Purdue had no answers for that dimension tonight. It was crazy.
No.
Let's flip to the backcourt from the Purdue side of things. Obviously, guarding Boo was one thing, but Braden Smith, I do think he looked like the new guy he is for much of this game. Like he was on track for a triple-double 10 minutes into the game. And then he kind of went back into the fetal position late in overtime, not from a scared sense, but just some of those bad habits, like leaving his feet on passes. He had the big charge late. Just mistakes that killed Purdue down the stretch of last season returned. What's your trust level with Braden right now?
More than Fletcher Lawyer right now. Braden at least looked, good, borderline great for parts of this game, especially in that first half. But the turnovers mounted. That last play, I don't even know who that was on in terms of that turnover where Braden kind of dropped the ball off to Lawyer, and then Lawyer jumped up and threw a dart at Edey's chest instead of, either passing it back to Braden Smith or trying to dribble out and get a better high-low look, because that pass that Lawyer made was just, it looked like he was put in a bad position, getting double teamed in the corner, and then just jumped and tried to get something off to Edey, and it was not a good pass at all. No. But this is where I think Edey's wasn't helping them much. And they mentioned it, the commentators mentioned it later in that game. He wasn't attacking passes at the end of that game like he usually does. And there were a couple of times where the ball was poked out. And granted, he was drawing a lot of fouls this way, but there are a couple of times where it looked like a good pass, and rather than use his 7-foot+ wingspan to grab the pass, he kind of let it come into his chest and the ball got poked out. And that particular play wasn't that, but he kind of did wait on the ball a little bit more than I thought he needed to. And Preston was just able to get around and get his hand on it. But I mean, you're talking about what, 10 assists to 8 turnovers from those two, Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, and 9 assists to 0 turnovers from Boo Buie. So it was a huge difference in the caliber of guard play in this game. And I think the play of the game was Boo Buie drawing the 5th foul on Lance Jones.
Mm-hmm.
You could argue that he initiated contact. It shouldn't have been a foul. Offensive players get that call 9 times out of 10.
Always.
It was the ultimate. Like, I have my brother in one, on the phone going, that's, a BS call, which maybe not, but it was also a very savvy move by Boo Buie, knowing he had a defender coming behind him to almost bait the ref into making a call. And if Lance Jones is in at the end of that game, there are a couple of times where Boo Buie got switched, I think, onto like Mason Gillis once and beat him. And maybe Lance Jones is able to stem some of the offense for Northwestern on the defensive end in that overtime period. Wasn't the Lance Jones game though, so he wasn't giving you much offensively, but defensively, I still think he would have been important in that overtime period.
100%. Yeah, I have a lot on Lance Jones I want to get to. I agree that sequence was completely critical, and you're right, divisive, because our Discord was up in flames about it. We got a bunch of Purdue fans. I think they're the majority in our Discord at this point, which I love. I love everybody in there, but yeah, just like my instant reaction in the game thread that we're reacting to was like, that was so stupid by Lance, and I'm hit with like 11 different, that wasn't a foul. And my rebuttal to this, I get it. If you slow down, like, okay, then sure, there's an argument it wasn't a foul. But 2 things. One, from the moment the ball was in possession of Northwestern, Lance Jones was picking Boo up full court, swiping at the ball for no reason. Like, he's lucky he didn't get hit when he visibly swiped down 5 seconds earlier than that with a foul call. And 2, this is the most frustrating part of watching Purdue for me right now. And it's not their fault. Zach Edey gets fouled so much just because of who he is that when you have an officiating crew that actually calls the fouls, they end up giving the other team calls too. And I don't necessarily think this was an unfairly officiated game on either side. It was just a foul fest. It wasn't basketball. Like, down the stretch of regulation into overtime, this game was guys playing for foul calls. It was not guys playing to make plays. And that is a result of Zach Edey getting fouled every possession because no one can stop him. But it puts the officials in an incredibly difficult spot because they want to call an even, fair game. And mentally, there is a subconscious element of this that they need to keep the calls around even. So Northwestern was just getting to the line repeatedly. I did think a lot of them were fouls, but it was not an enjoyable experience to watch the end of this game whatsoever. And that heightened play, like you said, the climax of the game ultimately was Boo playing for a foul call that, with the way the game was being officiated, they had to make that call, whether you want to complain about it or not. So you talked about Fletch. I'm with you. I don't like where he's at right now. He shot the ball well tonight. He also had one of the most egregious flop attempts I've ever seen right near the end of overtime. Like, he just had his mind made up. He's going to throw his chest and flail like he's Tyrese Proctor. We have to do the Lance Jones combo. Talk the big play with him. Here's my question. I think he did the best job, clearly, of any player on Purdue on Boo Buie tonight. I don't think that's up for debate. Why was the plan to switch and not just keep Lance Jones on him all game?
Matt Painter banging his head against a wall every single time he coaches. Like, I could understand trying to switch, because you look at Boo Buie, he got to the line, he shot 10 free throws. He was drawing fouls. He was getting at the rim. You're trying to, especially in a game where it's clear that they're going to call fouls on both sides, you're trying to manage that. You think you've got something with Smith or Lawyer. I didn't like them switching the forwards onto Boo Buie. No. That was awful awful strategy defensively on their part. But I agree with you. Like, put Lance Jones fouled out anyways.
Yeah.
So put Lance Jones on Boo Buie the whole game. Tell him to stop swiping. Tell him to, pick Boo Buie up at the half court instead of the full court. But no, I agree with you. I think he was trying his best to beat Boo Buie.
Yeah.
Which was good defensively, was awful offensively. Like he was what, 1 of 6, 1 of 7 from 3. At the end of that regulation, there were 2 or 3 3-point attempts that he just clanged. And you're sitting there going, your shot hasn't been there all game. Why are you attempting this? And part of the reason is there were a lot of times, and you could tell, there were times where Zach Edey missed and one opportunities from the floor and just looked so frustrated with himself. The 10 of 17 was frustrating because he missed a couple of bunnies anyways, but there should have been more shots made on fouls that Zach Edey just missed. And I think that's credit to Northwestern, right? The reason why their foul total was 29 fouls and they had 2 forwards foul out of this game was because they played Zach Edey to frustrate him, and they succeeded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they 100% did. I think Chris Collins deserves a lot of credit. I think everybody in a Northwestern uniform deserves a lot of credit. I think all the fans in that arena deserve a lot of credit. Like, this was a community-driven effort to beat Purdue, and it worked. It also just needs to be said, it's absurd. Like, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you're saying about how this wasn't Edey's best game. It's absurd that it wasn't his best game. He still had the production he did. Like, that's why he's the runaway national player of the year. There's nobody else in college basketball history that does what Edey did production-wise tonight. 35-14, 3 blocks, 10 for 17 from the floor, 15 for 20 from free throw line. Those are Wilt Chamberlain numbers. And we're sitting here criticizing like, oh, he could have been better. Like, it's just absurd. He's the runaway national player of the year. Purdue's going to be a favorite to win it all as long as he's in uniform.
And how many teams from the opposite sideline throw like a high-low pass into the post with 2 seconds left on the clock and make it?
I'm glad you bring that up. I'm glad you brought it up because I straight up would have forgotten about that play. Like, I have so many notes on other things right now. This game had everything. Mason Gillis, I feel like he's had a couple of these in his career. Like, quarterback in his future. Like, it's on the money, and there's just no stopping that, right? Like, I don't know how anybody can stop that if he puts the perfect pass there.
Right. It's like Donovan Clingan, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Hunter Dickinson, maybe. Like, you put a 7-footer on Zach Edey and maybe they can get the fingertip in there. But you're right. I mean, that pass I thought was going to be what won the game for Purdue. Like, I thought they were going to go to overtime. They were going to continue getting fouls and fouling out some of these Northwestern players. And it just, I mean, Boo Buie made some plays. Ty Berry made some plays. And it wasn't Purdue's night. They what, 5 turnovers in overtime?
Yeah.
For Purdue. Can I just say, I hated the fact that Northwestern wore black and gold against Purdue.
Aesthetically, like, watching the game, me too. But I almost respect the troll of it. Like, there's just like we're taking this little thing from you, which I love. Yeah, I just, by the numbers in the box score reading, people. 17 turnovers for Purdue to 3 for Northwestern. There's your ball game. I mean, yep. Right? That's the number. There were 56 fouls called in this game. That's an unwatchable product. And I don't know what the solution is. You heard me talk. I do not know what the solution is because Edey does get fouled that much. So, either Purdue's going to win these games foul discrepancy-wise by 20, or the officials are going to try and call it even, and it's not a watchable product. And by the way, not only is it unwatchable, I don't think it bodes well for Purdue when the game is called like this.
No.
Because if it comes down to Boo Buie getting to the line versus Zach Edey getting to the line, I know he's a great free throw shooter, but like that's not Purdue at their best, is Edey to the line every time. They're not going to create separation with that against worse teams than them. So I don't know how to fix this problem at all. And I don't know if it's on the officials or Purdue to fix it, but It's just messed
It's
up.
73 free throws total in this game. When you can foul Edie before he takes a shot, like as soon as he gets the ball, he shot 15 for 20 is good for a 7'4" guy, but you can almost keep one guy on him and take away the three ball, take away everyone else. And that's almost what they did in this game. And you saw it, 5 of 19. We talked about, do we think the 3-point shooting is sustainable for Purdue? We both thought it was. They come out 5 for 19, 26% from 3 against Northwestern. And I think part of that was Edie rarely got the ball with enough time to create space for his shooters. Like he either got the ball ready to shoot or he got fouled as soon as he got the ball with his back to the basket. There was no time for him to really work, to draw a double team and stuff like that, which again, credit to Northwestern because they threw bodies at him. They frustrated him and they didn't let him get to his best, which certainly didn't allow anyone else to get to theirs.
Yeah, I do. I'm glad we keep saying credit to Northwestern because I don't think anything we say negative about Purdue in this game is like entirely self-enforced. Like Purdue or Northwestern capitalized in the big moments. They hit the big shots. Boo was fantastic. Like you're going to run into that some games and it's tough to beat. But to the point on shooting, 5 for 19 as a team, 4 for 12 if you remove Lance Jones. And I get that's still not great. But like Lance Jones was missing some open looks in this game. And it leads me back to my Lance Jones conversation, man. Look, I admit it's an upgrade. It's absolutely an upgrade from what Purdue had last season as like the third cog in the wheel on the perimeter with this team. He does help with secondary ball handling. He is the best defender on this team. Lance Jones had opportunities to create separation and win this game for Purdue. He didn't do it. Say what you want. Other guys also blew opportunities, Braden Smith being the loudest one. But Lance Jones was brought here, I was told, to win games like this for Purdue. He missed a bunch of open threes. He fouled needlessly, repeatedly. And my last point on this, I get Paint did some weird stuff with the switching. It was weird. But I kept wondering, where is Lance Jones while Boo's going for 31 tonight? Like, it's not an acceptable answer to me that Lance Jones is in the corner, switched on to Ryan Langborg, while Boo Buie just feeds on. Like, that's not okay if Lance Jones is who Purdue fans say he is.
Ryan Langborg, who, by the way, went 7 for 13 from the field and 4 for 5 from 3. So it wasn't even like he made a difference there. No, I agree with you. And I think my take on Lance Jones is this game had the possibility, and we saw it a little bit in the first half, of being a track meet, which is where Lance Jones excels. Mm-hmm. As soon as the fouls started mounting, as soon as Northwestern started getting Purdue to be forced into those half-court sets, we saw it against Gonzaga. When Gonzaga was playing Purdue and winning, and they were getting into the half-court sets as well. Like Lance Jones, I think, thrives off of getting out in transition, running up the court and finishing plays. And Purdue just, you can't do that when you force 3 turnovers in a game.
Yeah, no, you can't. And look, I get this has become a very loud public thing of like Carter and I versus Lance Jones. And I know sometimes we revel in that. Sometimes we enjoy it. I really don't want to antagonize this kid. I know he's important and critical to Purdue, and I know he's a good player, truly. Like the difference between Purdue last year and this year to me, and I hear some people loudly saying, oh, this is the same team again. I think that's a fair criticism. The difference to me, why I do think they're different, is because last year's team, I think, didn't have what they needed to go win a national championship. I think it's even if it wasn't the first game, they would have clearly come up short because of holes in their roster. This year, I don't think they have the holes in the roster. I think the guys that they plugged in to fill the holes in their roster need to play better. And that's fingers pointed at Lance Jones. That's fingers pointed at Braden Smith. That's fingers pointed at Trey Kaufman-Renn, who was a disaster tonight. And look, Painter's going to have to move some things around. I don't think the formula is Kaufman-Renn at the 4 with Edey. I think it makes a lot more sense to go back to TKR and First together and Gillis next to Edey. And in crunch time, they were doing that. But it's just one of those things where I think we can definitively say this team does have answers this year. Those answers were just really bad in the biggest moments tonight. And I don't think that's going to be a constant, but it was the story tonight. And that's Lance Jones, it's Braden Smith. I mean, Fletcher Lawyer with the turn. Like, guys had chances to go win this game for Purdue, and everybody but Zach Edey didn't go out and do it.
Yeah, and I was really big as an anti-David Jenkins person last year. And I'm still not. And while Lance Jones tonight was exactly what I feared David Jenkins would have been last year as a starter, I think Lance Jones has been better as a secondary option than David Jenkins ever was. He just needs to understand that he's not the second option now. He's the third or the fourth.
Yeah.
And I think he's a fifth-year senior. He'll get it. He'll understand. He'll look back at this game and go, I was pretty good defending Boo Buie, and I was pretty bad offensively shooting from the corner. And maybe I take 3 fewer threes in this game and we win. But I still think even in this loss, what we saw at moments down the stretch of regulation, overtime was an absolute nightmare for Purdue. But towards down the stretch of regulation, when they were still kind of playing from behind and they were still going play for play with Boo Buie, I think Purdue still has that glimmer of hope that you mentioned. They're still one of the 5 best teams in the country. Teams lose. And it just so happened that Purdue always loses as soon as they get ranked number 1. So
hey, it's a blessing and a curse, right? To be the team with the biggest target on your back. I know we're going long. We said we were going to be quick, so I have to record more recaps after this. There's just so much to talk about for here. I have one final thing I want your opinion on here.
Okay.
I believe strongly Matt Painter is one of the smartest coaches in the country. Mm-hmm. I think it is widely accepted he's one of the smartest coaches in the country. Great X's and O's guy. There's not a lot to criticize about Matt Painter. After their loss last season, call it what it is, Painter did a whole press tour starting the moment the season ended at the press conference and then continuing into June, July, anywhere anyone could get a microphone in front of him. He would look the camera in the eyes and say, this starts with me. I need to look myself in the mirror. I need to make changes. I need to realize my formula hasn't been working. I think he tricked us. I think he lied this offseason. I know I'm here saying the roster's changed because I think it is. I don't think Painter did a thing tonight to help his team win in a different way than anything he's ever done. Why is Trey Kaufman-Renn playing with Zach Edey? It doesn't work. It hurts this team. Why is he switching forwards onto Boo Buie? It doesn't work. It was the reason they lost tonight. I just think you can strictly look at this game and point to multiple things that Painter did that set this team up for disaster, that Chris Collins outcoached him pointedly tonight. Am I crazy for this criticism?
No. And as a fan of a team with a coach that has had moments where you feel like he hasn't made adjustments, talking Gonzaga against Arkansas 2 years ago in the tournament, it's frustrating. And I agree with you. Mason Gillis should be starting at this point. Like, it just, you tried the Kaufman-Renn thing, but Mason Gillis looks better alongside Zach Edey, more confident. And I will say, in the loss last year, the one thing that did change in this game versus the loss last year to Fairleigh Dickinson is that the shooters didn't stop shooting.
Right.
Which last year you were begging them to shoot. This year they were just missing them. But
Hey, credit to Lance Jones. That's why we brought him here, right? He'll take the shots. He'll just miss the shots.
So, but I agree with you. I think you're after the first, what was it, 5 or 6 minute run by Northwestern to start the second half, you should be telling Lance Jones, you're not leaving Boo Buie, right? You should be telling him not to shoot, but you should be telling your guards, right, that honestly, I would have gone high-low Gillis to Edey more often, because the guards were not putting the ball nearly high enough for a 7'4" player to reach. And I understand it was drawing a lot of fouls, but I mean, Mason Gillis seemed like on that play, he could get the ball to kind of drop into the breadbasket for Edey. And these guards were not getting it done, whether it was entry passes or just, other stupid plays. But the entry passes just weren't working.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if we're pointing fingers at anyone, and I just sat here and pointed them at Lance Jones and Kaufman Wren and Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, I think the biggest, loudest fingers that should be pointed are at Matt Painter right now.
Yeah.
And I love Matt Painter. I am a huge fan of his. I've been adamant he's going to win a national title at some point. I still think it can be this year. But if you want to know why this team lost tonight, I thought Painter set him up for failure. And I think we're learning who he trusts. Like Miles Colvin, 2 minutes in this game. Ethan Morton, 8 minutes in this game. He's a guy who would have played 22 minutes in this game last year. Heidi, 18 minutes. Like, that was the big notable one you circle here. Okay, Heidi's working his way into a bigger role. I thought he was solid. He fouled a ton, but I thought he was fine. But it's going to be fascinating to watch, because Painter sold us this whole bill of, wow, things are going to be different. I don't think anything was different tonight, at least not with Kaufman Wren on the floor. And you're right, they kept shooting, but I question the caliber of shooting if it's just Lance Jones shooting, right? Like, those shots got to go to other guys. So,
right. And I just want to, Blake Preston at the end of this game, after everyone had fouled out, you're not going to look at the box score and say he made a big difference in this game, but Blake Preston made a big difference in that overtime period.
100%.
And you just, I mean, give him his flowers, because going in to defend Edey when you have 2 players that have already fouled out, you're giving 7 inches to Edey, and to play as well as he did defensively against Edey, I think he deserves all the credit in the world, because alongside Boo Buie, alongside the guards and making the free throws, preventing Edey from getting going in that overtime period was critical, and Preston was the primary reason why.
100%. I think everybody in a Northwestern uniform deserves credit for their contributions to this game. Barnheiser's probably the only one you come away being like, not his best tonight, but again, they got so much from other guys, it ended up not mattering. I'm ending with this. I have to end. Let me put my body language PhD hat on, Connor. Okay. How much of this is seeing ghosts? Because the Braden Smith and the Fletcher Lawyer that we saw in the final 3 minutes of overtime and the final 3 minutes of regulation looks a whole lot different than the guys that I thought we saw at the beginning of the season and for much of the Maui Invitational run.
%, seeing, or no, I guess, yeah, 80% seeing ghosts. I mean, you look at it, yes, Boo Buie thoroughly outplayed them. Purdue still went up against a Marquette team that was tailor-made to beat them. And Marquette came around in the second half. But Purdue in that first half against Marquette proved that maybe the same teams that beat them last year aren't going to be as big an issue. They came out ready. Marquette just made the adjustments. They beat a backcourt at Gonzaga that we've talked about isn't the strongest, but you still got Ryan Nembhard, Nolan Hickman, Dusty Stromer, who's a long, really aggressive defender. They beat the backcourt at Tennessee of Sakai Ziegler and Vescovi and Dalton Knack. Like, they've beaten good backcourts. They just went up against Boo Buie on a heater, and there's not many teams in the country that can stop that.
Yeah, and hopefully people remember that as the final note. Boo Booey, Boo Darius, my favorite player in the country, came and did what he did tonight. And that's what he does, by the way. How dare you? How dare anybody in the country let there be a tie game with the ball in Boo Booey's hands with 20 seconds left? I could have told you what was going to happen, Connor. I could have told you.
And wasn't that was the play where Mason Gillis switched on to Boo Booey, right? Or was, I think so. There was one towards like in the last minute, and I don't know if it was that one or the play after that, but
yeah, it was either Gillis or there was one with Gillis and one with Fletcher. And
yeah,
no, it was Heidi. It was Heidi. At the end of regulation,
yes.
It was Heidi, and that was just food. Boo Darius. I mean, that's what Boo Darius is going to do. Look, Purdue's going to be fine, but we are now allowed to do the whole Boo Birds criticisms of them. We weren't allowed to do it before this game. Now we kind of are. Sorry, Purdue fans. It's going to be skepticism here. And yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of this is mental, as shitty as it sounds. I think there are some big hurdles to clear, specifically for Braden Smith. Because at the end of the day, like, Lance Jones is going to keep shooting, whether they go in or not. He's going to keep shooting. Fletcher Lawyer, I think, is going to keep shooting and flopping. Braden Smith has to be the guy that determines this. And tonight, I mean, they had a 3-point lead with the ball in his hands in overtime. He couldn't secure the win. We'll see if that changes down the stretch. And comp, by the way, I always do comps with you, Connor. Body language wise, psychology wise, I'm starting to get a little Aaron Kraft from Braden Smith, and I don't mean that as a compliment. I don't like it.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, just I didn't like the body language I saw. I mean, obviously, I didn't like the body language I saw from pretty much any Purdue player tonight. With the exception of, like, again, to Mason Gillis, like, he came in and he did his thing, and he didn't seem like he wasn't showing the frustration that I think you saw from every other player, which might be a bad thing considering the position Purdue was in. But you saw, Zach Edey was getting super frustrated despite dominating on the interior. You saw that Aaron Craftiness from Braden Smith. Lance Jones, when he fouled out, I'm like, I get it. He threw his body into you, but you also shouldn't be running like on the back shoulder of Boo Booey, knowing who he is and how crafty he is. So no, I didn't like the body language I saw from any of the Purdue players in this game.
There was a lot of panic, and with the Kraft thing for me, I thought for 4 years, Kraft was one of the top 5 point guards in the country. His entire tenure, he was on top 10 teams the entire time he was in college. I think I picked him to make Final Fours 4 straight years in a row. It didn't happen because in the biggest moments of his career, he got spooked and turned into a different guy. And that's kind of, I'm just seeing some like Mr. Hyde, right? Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde from Braden Smith, where when things get sticky, he's at his worst. And when it's just a coasting regulation game, if they're up 8, he's on pace for a triple-double. He can do it. He's that good, but he has to do it in the clutch. He has to do it in a tie game with 30 seconds left.
I mean, at the end of overtime, he had the charge on the jump pass. I still think that pass to Lawyer was the wrong play. And there were a couple of other plays, like in those last 2 minutes of overtime, where
he had the no look. He tried to throw it like he literally had a layup or just a pretty simple touch pass, and he tried to throw it behind his neck, no look. And that sparked the entire Northwestern run. Ty Berry went down and hit a 3 the next play. So I think it's entirely mental, but that's like, to me, if we're singling out one thing beyond Painter, it's like, Braden, you are too good for this. I know, I believe that with my bones. He's too good of a player to do this in the clutch, and hopefully it changes for Purdue's sake. But I'd be lying if I think Brian Ralph, who I'm about to record with, tweeted very close to the end of this game. He was like, Purdue's not going to lose in the first weekend, but this is a little scary. And I wanted to quote tweet it. I literally did, and I deleted it. I wanted to quote tweet and be like, are we sure? Because the team we saw tonight is absolutely capable of losing in the first weekend. All of the demons are back. Hopefully they shake it off. This is still one of the top 5 teams in the country, no doubt. It'll be fun to watch you all season long. We'll be here to recap them preview them, all of that. In fact, next week, we're going to bring a couple friends from Boilers in the Stands on. Craig Bowers, Joe Jackson, both of them do amazing work. They've asked if they can come on for the Iowa preview next week. So stay tuned for that, Boiler fans. Hang in there. It's okay. You're 7-1. You're still the Maui Invitational champs. For Connor Hope from Heat Check, I'm GregWaddell from Sleepers. We will see you next time.